If you're 30 years old right now, make great money, and think saving $1 million is going to let you retire comfortably, I need you to sit down because that number is a lie. By the time you're 60, living off $1 million nest egg won't even keep your head above water. 5 years ago, I gave up on the entire fantasy of retirement and that arbitrary $1 million goal, and instead started acquiring assets that are freeing up my time now and building real wealth for my family's future. In these next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly why the concept of retirement is a complete farce for our generation, and exactly what I'm building instead via two specific assets so the income you're already earning finally starts working for you to build wealth now. I'm Nick, and I was a multi six figure earner, working professional, postponing life until retirement. Now I'm creating a movement to help working professionals crush their limiting beliefs about money and build a portfolio of real assets that enable you to get off of the financial hamster wheel and stop postponing your life until 60. If this is where you want to be, please like and subscribe below. Now, let's get into it. So, the number everyone still believes. So, why isn't that old $1 million mark a viable benchmark anymore? Every year, the money you're earning and putting into a 401k buys a little less than it did the year before. And that's not news. You already know this. But here's the part that hits high earners the hardest. The better you get paid, the more your entire financial life gets denominated in the exact same currency that is devaluing over time. You could be earning more than 95% of the people around you, and if the income is still sitting in a slow growing retirement account, then you're still losing ground every single year. Not because you're bad with money, because the vehicle you're storing it in was never built to actually grow and protect it at a pace that keeps up with inflation. So the question I had to ask myself and start asking was not, can I save $1 million? It was, what will $1 million actually be worth by the time I need it? I panicked when I did the math. Here's what $1 million does for you in retirement, living off the traditional 4% rule. If you have $1 million and you're supposed to live off of 4% of the interest, right, or the earnings to keep that nest egg alive, that's only $40,000 a year. If you're living off $40,000 a year now in 2026, you're completely broke and destitute, and you're in a bad way. Now, let's say you're a super good saver, super disciplined, you save up even $2 million. So $2 million at 4% comes out to what, 80,000 a year? Say you bump it up a little bit, even live off 100,000 a year. If you're living off $100,000 a year now in 2026, you're getting by. You may not be the most comfortable, you may not be able to do everything you want to do, but you're getting by. Now imagine 30 years from now, the devaluing of the dollar, inflation, what $100,000 will buy you 30 years from now, it'll almost be the same of what $40,000 to $50,000 a year is now. And the timing couldn't be worse because after 60, you have more and more health concerns and different expenses arise. Yeah, you may not have the mortgage, but the costs of healthcare have been increasing exponentially with inflation as well. So picture this. You spend 30 years making well over six figures, sacrificing, saving, doing all the right things. You finally hit that 1 million or even $2 million number at age 60. And the version of the $1 or $2 million you're holding only buys a fraction of what it would have bought when you started saving and investing. Before healthcare costs even enter the picture, that's not a comfortable retirement. That's financial destitution, even though you did everything right. Here's the part that made me most angry when I first understood it. Retirement as a concept is not some timeless law of nature. This isn't how humanity worked for all of time. It's actually a relatively modern invention. Retirement was designed to solve a very specific problem: create reliable, predictable employees who would trade their life's time, 30 to 40 years of it, for a paycheck. I remember the main turning point for me when I realized I had to quit chasing retirement and start building assets now to get out of this trap. Early in my journey in investing, I went to a cryptocurrency investing conference, and at the time was a little bit out of my element, meaning the majority of the people there were millionaires or even more. And the parking lot was Porsche, Lambo, Ferrari, etc. I was in my Hyundai rental. But it wasn't just the cars, the material wealth that made me feel a little out of place. There was actually something deeper. See, they had complete time freedom. They were all incredibly generous, kind, and honestly, some of the most genuine, humble people I'd ever met in my life. They had influence, generosity, freedom. They had what I didn't. They had a whole different identity. And, they were staying after the conference and enjoying that area on extended vacation with their families. And I had to hustle and get back on the plane to go back to the grind of my day job at the time. And it was waiting in the airport and the terminal that I made a vow to myself that I would do whatever it takes to get off that financial hamster wheel and start building assets that pay me whether I actually show up or not. The point is this: Time is finite. You cannot get more of it, print more of it, or earn more of it. Money is infinite. It can be created, it's being printed to infinity, multiplied. High earners are often the best at generating that infinite asset, money, and the worst at protecting the finite one, our time, because the paycheck is good enough to make the trade feel painless. But that's completely backwards. And it's not an accident. The better your income, the more comfortable and the more expensive those golden handcuffs become. I realized if I was going to get the financial freedom and time freedom these people had, I had to rewire my beliefs about money, upgrade my identity, and start building assets that actually work in this generation. So here's how I started building my own path out of this cycle and what I coach high performing professionals through every week. What I've realized is the biggest barrier isn't your income. You already have that. The barrier is identity. Most high earners don't struggle to build wealth because they lack the money or information. They struggle because somewhere along the way, they adopt an identity that says, I trade my time for money. I just suck it up for decades and put what's left into a retirement account. And someday, if I'm lucky, that pile of savings is going to set me free. That mindset puts your entire life on hold for 30 years or more. But the moment you shift your identity from earner to owner, everything changes. You start asking, what can I own today that pays me whether I show up to work or not? Same income, two completely different outcomes. When I was on that plane ride home from that conference, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was no different from any of those wealthy people in that room. None of the millionaires there were necessarily smarter than me. The difference in their results and experience in their life was that they believed in themselves and they're willing to step outside of the false teachings we've had about money, step outside that box of retirement and pursue a life of freedom. They didn't ask for permission to be successful or wealthy. They simply went and made it happen. At that point, I had to allow God to change my inner identity to align with the truth. I am capable of building wealth. He has an amazing plan for me and my family. I'm able to help others. I'm worthy of success. And I had to quit setting retirement goals, instead create a vision of what I wanted my life to look like with true time and financial freedom. My why became bigger than myself and propelled me to start building a life of freedom. And the moment you shift your identity from employee waiting for retirement to asset owner building income, the entire timeline compresses. You stop asking, how much do I need to save by 60? And start asking, what can I own today that pays me whether I show up or not? If this is hitting home for you and you're ready to start buying back your time, I have a free training below that's a condensed portion of my actual coaching program. It's called the Millennial Money Freedom Training. It goes over the mindsets, truths about money, lies about money, and the four main assets that work for our generation. Link is below in the description. So here's what I'm doing instead. Instead of letting my income creep into a bigger lifestyle or parking it in the same tools everyone else is using and hoping it survives 30 years of inflation, I'm building cash flowing assets now, assets that generate income independent of a job. The goal isn't to have just a bigger pile of money by the time you're old. The goal is enough monthly cash flow to replace your paycheck within the next 5 to 10 years, so you're not waiting 30 to 40 years. I already had the one thing many people building wealth didn't, and that was a strong income to redirect. That puts you ahead of the game, but only if you put it in the right vehicles that move the needle in this generation. See, money's like manure. If it just sits in a big pile, it stinks. But if you move it around strategically to the right things, it causes them to grow. The entire game is this: replace the income. When cash flow replaces your paycheck, you don't need permission from a retirement calculator to start living life on your terms. You buy back your time while you still have the energy, the health, and the years left to actually enjoy it. This isn't about getting rich quick overnight. It's about redirecting the same effort, energy, and discipline that you're currently using in your job and into a 401k into assets that will actually pay you for life. This gets your time and money freedom back in less than 10 years, not 30 years down the road. So, what are the two asset vehicles that can actually make this happen in this generation? For me, it's real estate and utility cryptocurrencies. First, let's look at real estate. Real estate works because it does something almost nothing else does. It lets you use other people's money, primarily banks, to control an appreciating, cash flowing asset while someone else's rent payment covers the debt. Real estate is one of the only investment vehicles with a gas pedal, meaning using leverage wisely and as a tool, you are in control of how fast or slow you want the growth to be. There's only so much land, only so much buildable inventory in the places people actually want to live. So that built-in scarcity is exactly why real estate holds its value against our current devaluing currency, the US dollar, generation after generation. It's more hands-on. It's proven. It gives you control. It produces cash flow, the kind you can actually replace a paycheck with. And over a short amount of time, if done properly, this is the foundation. It's the piece that can start paying your bills and provide unparalleled long-term stability. If you want a full breakdown of exactly how to get into your first cash flowing property, comment the word challenge below and join me for my free 3-day challenge where I'll show you the exact blueprint necessary to acquire your first cash flowing property in less than 12 months. So the second vehicle I love was fixed supply utility-based cryptocurrencies. And these are built on the same core principles, real estate, scarcity, except just powered by technology. But for the first time in history, everyday people have direct access to owning a piece of a scarce, inflation-resistant asset class, literally the rails of the new global financial ecosystem at the ground floor, without needing a bank's permission. If used correctly, it becomes an asymmetric growth engine that accelerates the timeline for the rest of this strategy. And the way I like to think about this is it's like the gold rush, right? So when gold was found out west and people were going, it wasn't the people that were digging up and painting the rivers and the creeks and blowing holes in mountainsides looking for the gold that got wealth. Some of them did. But the people that built wealth and wealth for generations after them were the people that owned the rails, the railroads, the pickaxes, the shovels, the wheelbarrows, all the things that the people that were chasing the gold rush used to find the gold. So with that, that's very similar to cryptocurrencies in our generation. You have the opportunity to buy a piece of the actual rails that are currently changing our financial system from now until 2030, where everything is being tokenized on the blockchain. The entire reason utility-based cryptocurrencies matter is the word fixed supply. Unlike the dollar, which can be printed to infinity, a fixed supply asset has a hard mathematical ceiling on how much of it will ever exist. You cannot inflate it away. More capital chases a finite supply. The incentive structure works in the early holder's favor. That's a fundamentally different relationship with money than anything the old retirement model was built on. And the amazing part is, right now, you're in the exact perfect position to start acquiring a piece of these technologies, the actual rails of the new global financial system, at extremely low entry points. The good news is you're still early. The crypto space carries more volatility than real estate in the short term, but within the next 5 or 6 years as we go through 2030, all that changes with national and global legislation that's in the works right now, defining the rules of the road for this asset class. And by that time, the winners in this space will be evident, the profits gained will be immense, and these junk meme coins will be gone. And price stability for the winning technologies will settle in. But once that happens, the door of opportunity for growth will have closed. If you're ready to be on the receiving end of the greatest wealth transfer in human history, this is one asset class that you must have an allocation in. So, putting real estate and cryptocurrency together, here's the actual strategy. Real estate is your stable cash flowing foundation. Fixed supply utility-based cryptos is your asymmetric growth engine that is slated to completely transform the global financial system. One replaces your income and provides long-term wealth. The other accelerates your timeline, and profits can either be sold and rolled into more real estate or held onto and borrowed against to acquire more real estate. Paired with the identity shift we already talked about from employee to asset owner, these two vehicles are the fastest, most accessible path to replacing your income this generation has ever seen. So the truth is that $1 million was never the finish line. It was a number designed for a different economy, for a different era, sold to you by a system that needed you working for them for 40 years. You don't have to wait until you're 60 to start living. You don't have to trade your most valuable asset for a currency that's designed to lose value. You can start building the cash flow that replaces your income now, in the next 5 to 10 years, not the next 40. If this hits something in you, that's not an accident. That's your financial identity starting to shift. If you want help figuring out exactly where your identity is capping your income, in the description below is a link to my Millennial Money Freedom Training, free condensed portion of my actual coaching program I use to help rewire your mindset about money and start building this portfolio that will actually change your life now and build generational wealth for your family. Don't just watch the training. Start upgrading your mindset and let's build the version of your life that doesn't require permission. And just as a reminder, like I say in most of my videos, none of this is financial advice, but is my own opinion and for educational and informational purposes only. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.